Once in a while, something happens in music that totally turns the whole medium on its head. If you're lucky, you'll be alive to bear witness to one of these impactful events. The world domination of Michael Jackson, Jimi Hendrix at Woodstock, Nirvana changing the direction of rock with Smells Like Teen Spirit, and yet all of these things pale in comparison to the Punk Goes Blank album series produced by Fearless Records. And today we will be admiring the worst of the worst from this series. Okay, so we may have overstated that first part, but we hope you join us on this wild ride through an often overlooked piece of questionable music history. Ask any former emo kid, and they probably have a personal favorite track from these albums. So how, and more importantly, why did the Punk Goes albums start? Well, let's go back to the prime days of Warped Tour when one of the co-writers of this video was enduring its sweltering conditions and almost being crushed to death by a crowd in order to get a glimpse of all-time low. Pop punk was having its moment, and more importantly to Fearless Records, it was making a lot of money. The label themselves even claimed the way too specific title of the top-selling compilation in the alternative genre, boasting cumulative album sales in excess of 2.5 million and nearly 250 million streams to date. The first album in the series was Punk Goes Metal in 2000, which makes a lot more sense genre-wise than what would come soon after. That through line from punk to metal isn't a crazy jump. But this series, this label, this idea really became prominent in the pop punk scene in 2001 with, you guessed it, Punk Goes Pop. This has some pretty interesting picks, like Yellowcard's cover of Everywhere by Michelle Branch. Here's the original.
You're everywhere.
And here's the Punk Goes Pop Yellowcard version.
You're everywhere.
It is at this time when I need to explain that the people in charge of this are being pretty generous with describing their artists as punk in their title. If any hardcore punk rock fans watching this thought that it was gonna be Dead Kennedys and The Clash covering pop music, no. Think less about what you know as punk rock and more about the fact that we mentioned Warped Tour a little while ago. Many of these covers honestly sound like they're just an obvious excuse for people that are, insert extremely large sarcastic quotes, too cool to listen to pop music to listen to pop music. But there's no denying how easily these tracks cross genres, even if they're painfully, stereotypically pop punk at times. In their eyes, going from pop to punk just means adding electric guitar and bad drums to Baby One More Time, and replacing Britney with some whiny white guy in his late 20s that has a thing for underage girls. You can assume how most of these songs sound. But for something truly awful from this album, see Heaven is a Place on Earth by the band Student Rick, with vocals I can only describe as Eric Cartman adjacent.
Ooh, heaven is a place on earth.
Moving on to the crown jewel of garbage, Punk Goes Crunk, released in 2008, and this is the actual album cover that is sending shivers down my spine even just thinking about it right now. P.S. With that timing, all I'm thinking of is a struggling couple making their way through the global financial crisis. It's the worst it's been money-wise since the Great Depression, and your snot-nosed kid is blasting pop-punk versions of rap songs at full volume. We would also like to acknowledge the fact that a lot of the songs they're covering are simply not crunk. Crunk is a term for a high-energy southern hip-hop sound with an aggressive, dance-oriented nature. It's clear that for Fearless Records and
Punk Goes Crunk,
crunk is pretty much boiled down to all hip-hop ever, ranging from Will Smith in Men in Black to ODB, Rihanna, Outkast, Lil Jon, and even Arrested Development. Hip-hop is a wide umbrella term. Crunk is not, but these guys clearly don't care about what things mean at all. The album begins with Put Yo Hood Up by Set Your Goals, who fittingly opens the song by shouting out some of the whitest suburbs in the California Bay Area. Still, on the surface, this seems like it would be one of the more tolerable songs on this album. At least it's kind of self-aware, until you realize that it's 5 minutes long, which seems to go on for an eternity, especially when you have to get through a Yoda impression rap verse. This is a real thing. Here's the original, and the abomination. Forever the Sickest Kids cover of the aforementioned credit song to the 1997 film Men in Black opens kind of promisingly with a straightforward pop-punk version of the chorus. Unfortunately, like most other songs on this album, this then transitions into unseasoned white boy rapping. None of them are the Fred Dursts that they want to be. Once again, we are failing to see the crunk in this song, but also this is just a laughable pick for hip-hop in general. The first thing that comes to mind for rap music for these guys is the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Yeah, actually, never mind, I can totally believe that.
The good guys dress in black, remember that, just in case we're ever face to face and make contact. The title held by me.
Another unfortunate inclusion in this is I Wanna Love You by The Maine, originally by Akon. The opening makes you think it's going to be a travesty with its cheap preset Casio keyboard type beat and your local PCP dealer doing Akon's classic intro.
Convict music. Convicts music.
But it's not totally excruciating. The whole song just sounds deflated. It feels like they were trying really hard to bring some originality to this Midwest emo-leaning cover, and they ended up sounding rushed in some parts and just lethargic in others. I feel nothing about this.
You and you already know I wanna love you.
One of the standouts on this album that really runs with the concept is Devil Wears Prada's cover of Still Fly by Big Timers, aka Birdman and Manny Fresh. This one gets double points because not only do they turn up the dial to 10 stylistically, but the original is much more authentic to Crunk than just about everything else that these bands picked from. If screaming isn't your thing, you probably won't love this one, but I really appreciate them actually going for it and not phoning it in. It feels like the most fully fleshed out song in this album with solid instrumentals. Do you ever listen to Umbrella by Rihanna and think, man, this is all good, but I really wish this song had a lot more sneering pop-punk vocals? Well, All Time Low's cover is made for you. Co-writer Brin has a special place in her heart for this song, but also readily admits that the chorus is pretty much unbearable, with Alex Gaskarth's Ella, 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 A, feeling torturously long and tedious, but the rest of it is pretty solid, just a fun pop-punk track with definitely no bias whatsoever, wink wink. And if we're being honest, I think the themes and lyrics of the original are perfectly ripe for a pop-punk cover.
You can stand under my umbrella, Ella, Ella.
There is something sort of fun about the Escape Frame's Nothing But a G thing in a very 2010s indie sleaze kind of way. It doesn't sound like it's trying too hard to be something it's not, the singers aren't trying to act cooler than they are, or overly point out how lame all of this is conceptually. It doesn't sound super pop-punk until a small, welcome flourish in the last 30 seconds, and they took this song in a unique direction, which is exactly what so many tweens loved about this compilation back in the day. For all the terrible, no good, bad songs on this album, the covers that are a disgrace to who they are covering. P.S. I can't even fathom that there's a Cody Chestnut song on here. I can't take this anymore. Somebody please get me out of here. I will leave you with Hey Ya by Laureen Drive. Some might say, wow, you guys even had to mess with musicians as sacred as Andre 3000 and Big Boy? You had to kill arguably the most likable song ever made? But this one literally just sounds like a Kidz Bop version, and that right there says more about this whole project than I ever could. Hey, thank you for watching that video. If you want to support the channel, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. You can follow me on social media at RenshawHS. You can support me on Patreon, Twitch, or buy my merch. Thank you again. I'll see you soon.